I was having a facade that I had it all together, but deep down inside, there was tremendous untreated childhood trauma waiting for me, knocking at the door of my heart and my mind, saying, when are you going to address these changes? When are you going to let go? When are you going to grow up from this instead of being a victim?
Welcome, everybody, to Spirituality. If you're new here, my name is Kat, and I'm a longtime astral traveler and spirit consultant. If you're returning, thank you so much, and we love and appreciate you. I'm really excited to be joined today by Blanca, who is the owner and CEO of Wounded Healer and best-selling author. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kat. What an honor it is to be here.
I feel like I really just want to jump in, but can you begin by just letting everybody know a little bit about yourself, your journey, and how you got to doing Wounded Healer?
Yes, wounded healers. We are people that we use the very challenging moments in our lives, our dark seasons in our life, as a big inspiration to help others improve their quality of life. I mean, this concept really caught me when I was invited to a podcast, and this lovely gentleman, he named our episode "The Diary of a Wounded Healer," and I said to myself, "That is it. That is exactly what I want my company to be about." And under this umbrella, I am a practicing licensed massage therapist for the state of Florida for 20 years. I'm a holistic life coach. I am a fitness instructor for population of 45 people and over, best-selling book co-author, and definitely my favorite one, which is the Inner Truth Project. That this platform, it is to help women and men that are survivors of sexual assault and sexual violence. So this is practically what a wounded healer does. I come from a culture. My father lost his life unexpectedly when I was 8 years old, and back in those days, our culture was about shh, you don't talk about the dead, because it was a culture. Nobody will talk about that. And going down that rabbit hole of silence, and me and my 8-year-old mind, I said, well, if I cannot talk about something as bad and horrific in my life as the loss of my father was, I couldn't talk about any bad experiences in my life. And definitely living in a world of silence, of trying to figure out so many things on your own, it can take people, it took me definitely to a very deep rabbit hole of confusion, low self-esteem, low self-worth, shame, and learning those lessons about what the silence does to you, did to me. I started to learn the lessons that reaching out for support is a great thing. Understanding that believing in something that is higher than ourselves, that we have this guiding force that will help us through. It was for me one of the most beautiful rootings for my healing, for my progress, for becoming something better in life. For me in life, everything is about progress, not perfection. And everything in this life happens for a reason. I am still here today because this mission is big. It became something bigger than myself. And my biggest mission as a wounded healer is to help others improve their quality of life. I was in confusion corner for decades of my life. There's always another corner to turn and say, hey, now everything is making sense. Now everything is falling into place. And these are the times when definitely everything is falling into place by the form of talking to others, communicating to the world that, hey, you're not alone. This happens more often that we may even think of, and
Yeah.
and it will be better with support through the form of these very important podcasts.
I 100% agree. I was really excited to do this episode. I'm a survivor myself of trauma and abuses, and absolutely a culture, an overall culture of silence and avoidance was not helping anybody. Things like this, violence, trauma, abuse, people are human. We're all human and everybody goes through things. Pretending like it wasn't happening was just keeping a lid on behaviors that were always problematic, both
Absolutely.
the need to heal and share things and things that needed to be looked at culturally and changed.
Mhm.
So I think it's a huge blessing that so many people have been able to come forward to speak up about the things that have happened to them and begin to work through that, because you can be a healer and reach out a hand and help somebody else who's going through a similar situation. And that's a very powerful energy to be able to say, to not say I have all the answers, do what I say, but to say I've been there.
Absolutely.
So that empathy and understanding that comes with the experience is so powerfully transformative for people who otherwise feel alone. It's such important work. I appreciate you so much
Oh, thank you,
for
thank
what
you.
you do.
Thank you, definitely, definitely. And this is, this is to me and my experience of doing this very important work of helping others feeling better in so many ways. Definitely is a win-win situation because we really do learn from each other. I have quite a few clients that they're doing some holistic life coaching with me, and from different ages, different financial statures, because it doesn't matter how wealthy someone may be, the trauma, the loneliness, the rejection, the neglect, the childhood trauma can be really, really there, knocking on people's hearts and minds, saying, when is this going to end? When are we going to submit ourselves and embrace these changes that are so very important for our lives? And this is the thing. From the moment of conception to the moment of our death, we are beings of change. This is unavoidable. Change is like drinking water. Change is like breathing. We just don't go without. And we are beings of habits. We adapt to new habits. We let go of habits. It takes 21 to 67 days to let go or adapt to a new habit. And in many cases, if that habit is too instilled within us, that the rooting is so deep and so deep, which may come hand in hand with childhood trauma, like my case, it takes even longer time to get used to these changes, to embrace the new habits that can be so good for ourselves. It can be so relieving. It can be so empowering for our lives. I grew up in a culture, I'm Puerto Rican, and I grew up in a culture where the concept of being a good woman meant you are last and everybody comes first. If you're a good woman, you are in the bottom of the list. If you're a good woman, you will obey. If you're a good woman, you quiet down. If you're a good woman, you put down your head. I never believed in that. And definitely I was one of these people that I learned how to have this facade that everything was perfect, that everything was great, that I was so-called functional, that I had all my things together and everything was going for me. And yes, I was having a functional life. I was having a facade that I had it all together, but deep down inside, there was tremendous untreated childhood trauma waiting for me, knocking at the door of my heart and my mind, saying, when are you going to address these changes? When are you going to let go? When are you going to grow up from this instead of being a victim, instead of going to the self-pity, instead of blaming everybody for your actions? And
Yeah.
once I started to get out of this comfort zone that wasn't comfortable at all, that it was a habit, I said to myself, you know what? It's time for change. It's time to take a good look at the mirror and say to that woman in front of me, where are you taking your life from now on? In my own experience, I do know that once we really, really dive into these changes, see the world from a different lens, only wonderful things will happen. That is for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful to point out that habits can be not just behaviors, but a pattern of thought. Like our thoughts become a habit as well.
Absolutely.
And depending on how we're socialized to think of yourself in a certain way, becomes just as habitual as any other habit that you have. And in fact,
Hmm.
I think, and this is just me, I think thoughts can become an addiction like any other addiction. So
Oh,
if
yeah.
we're in a pattern of, every time something happens, every time something gets triggered, we automatically, that habit of negative ruminations or negative self thoughts, or I should just be quiet, or the way we fold up on ourselves
Right.
becomes not just a habit, but almost an addiction, to the point where we have
Yes.
difficulty with an intervention, a self intervention, in order to break
Hmm.
those habits. So
Yes.
it really is a much more serious thing, and a challenging thing to overcome for people than I think sometimes we give it credit for.
Hmm.
What do you think are some of the best, like, just starting steps for people who may start to be realizing that they have some of those thought patterns, some of those habits of self-suppression or beating up on themselves? What are some good kind of starting steps just to ease themselves into beginning to look at change for that?
I believe that the first and the simplest and most important step here in the rooting of it all is awareness. Starting to bring awareness to ourselves about how we feel with certain actions that we continuously do. And I can tell you from my own experience, and just like you said, there's certain thoughts that we can become addicts of it. And I was addicted to victimhood. Everybody else was doing something to me and doing something to me when it really wasn't the case. Why is this happening repeatedly? Because the lesson will start repeating itself over and over and over again. In my case, I was addicted to victimhood, and I was addicted to having relationships with people that didn't want anything to do with me, that just wanted to, we just wanted to have some fun with each other. And then I was supposedly in love with someone. No, I was in an illusion, and I did this same pattern. It was part of my addiction to victimhood because I go straight back to childhood trauma. So I come from a lot of violence, and I kept on attracting to my life was violence and people rejecting, neglect, isolation, reject, neglect, isolation over and over and over and over, because I just kept on repeating the pattern and this generational trauma that was my companion until I started to cut the umbilical cord and let go of that and say, okay, something better has to be out there for me. So I believe that awareness is definitely the rooting of better things to come. I journal a lot.
Mhm.
So my journaling definitely helped me understand this pattern that I had, that it was repetitive and repetitive over and over and over, the same repetition of the same situation with a different face. The rooting for me as doing everything alone, trying to do everything on my own because I didn't think that I was worth anybody's time. Here we go with low self-worth right here. Low self-esteem and low self-worth. I didn't believe that I was worth anybody's time. Once I started to seek support, that was getting out of my so-called comfort zone tremendously, because I tried to do everything on my own and it really doesn't work that way. And let me tell you something, support will always come. There are definitely angels here on earth in the form of beautiful faces that they will never let you down, and they will always be there to support you. So it's very important for people that are starting this journey to find the support on someone that they are not there to judge you, but to lift you up. Definitely.
Yeah, and I think it's a challenging step for some
Hmm.
healing journeys because trust can be such a part of what needs to be healed, opening up to
Absolutely.
people. So it's almost like the step of being able to reach out to other people is a piece of the
Right.
healing journey in and of itself. And I'm really
Hmm.
glad that you brought up the journaling because that helped me a lot too, because it's a way to put the thoughts on paper, but the paper doesn't disappear. Like the thought
Right.
can disappear, and then I forgot that I thought it, but
Yeah.
now that I wrote it down, I go back, like for me, I was sort of addicted to the pain, the sadness, the sorrow of it all.
Hmm.
Um, it became a pattern through trauma, which was all very valid and all very real and all very justified.
Of course.
But I almost, after, I began to, it was like the feeling of that, the longing, the sadness, it was like I would tell myself stories to call back up that feeling, even
Hmm.
in situations where it wasn't necessary or where it was just my interpretation of the situation that made it necessary. And having it written down gave me the power to go back and reread that and go, is that really what happened? Or
Yeah.
are you just doing this to yourself? And so,
Hmm.
yeah, it was really helpful in the awareness process of having it written down somewhere where I could go back and just double check myself. How do you think we can go about defeating the internal shame of situations? Like, I feel like sharing is part of that, but it's such a big step, like I said, like trust, to reach out and
Hmm.
speak up about the things that we've been through. How can we start to work with our own internal shame about things that we've been through?
So true. I believe that um, the biggest and purest form of forgiveness is forgiving ourselves first, and being accepting responsibility for our actions. It doesn't matter where it comes from. I went to psychotherapists, I went to group therapists, because it wasn't about me keeping on doing these things alone. It wasn't about me going through a healing process alone, because I needed the support. It's like the first thing that had to happen is I stopped comparing myself to others. Stop looking up to my surroundings, to what they're doing, when my healing process is a personal journey. It's me, myself, and I. And I can tell you this, the moment that I started to practice on the mirror, that was a challenge, but it was worth it. The moment that I started to look at myself in the mirror and started forgiving myself and started saying, Blanca, I forgive you for mistreating yourself. I forgive you for your silence. I forgive you for not respecting yourself. I forgive you for being everybody's victim. I forgive you for all of these things. I started seeing my own life from a very different lens. And self forgiveness is complicated, it's difficult. You get out of your comfort zone. It takes blood, sweat, and tears. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth it, because the wounds are not our fault, because none of our wounds are our fault. But this healing journey is our responsibility. It's our biggest investment that we can do in this life, is the investing on ourselves. To me, healing is not about running away from trauma. Healing is about confronting our trauma so we can understand ourselves a little bit better and move on from there. Because sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. I was my own worst enemy for a long time. I was numbing my pain in the form of drugs, alcohols, and jumping from person to person to person to person. And none of that worked. None of it. If the universe conspired in a beautiful way, thank you, universe, for me to still be alive today, I'm not going to take it for granted, not even for a second, because I could have easily been the statistic of a woman that she OD'd and left two kids behind, or the woman that her ex-partner killed her and she left two kids behind. And it doesn't matter where we come from. It doesn't matter what age we are. Here I am. I'm going to be 60 years old this year, and I'm still learning. I'm still healing. I am still going through this process, and it's for the rest of my life, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. The whole opposite. This is something that should bring you joy, that should make you smile every day, that should make you feel grateful for it every day, every single day. I wake up in the morning saying, thank you because I'm still here. Thank you because I'm going to be with Kat tonight. Thank you because I'm going to spread the words. Thank you because I'm going to share with the world one more time my story, because if one person that I help, two, three, a million, my day is done. And it's a lot to be grateful
I
for.
definitely feel you about, like, as much as I can look back on my life and for a long time, like, oh my God, what was I doing? Like, similarly, a lot of self-destructive behavior, a lot of partying from a very, very young age, a lot of like self-abusive behaviors, drugs, alcohols, guys, not even caring what happened to myself, ending up with charges, ending up in juvie, ending up institutionalized. Like, it was just a lot. It was a traumatic way to grow up. And I do, when I look back on it, like, I have to be grateful because there were so many instances where I could have been a statistic. I could have been easily in the newspaper, protected and guided always, and I am
Right.
grateful for that every day.
Hmm.
Sometimes when we're going through the worst of what we're going through, there's a way to look at it and, to your point, like, feel like a victim or feel like you're self-abusing, be hard on yourself. But there's another way to look at it and say, think about how protected I was through all of that I'm still here today to talk about it.
Exactly.
That's blessing.
Hmm.
um I think sometimes people say everything that happens is either a lesson or it's a blessing, but I think you get to a place where you realize the lessons are a blessing. It's
Right.
not different. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a really good way to look at it. Self-forgiveness self-forgiveness can be a tough journey, and I had actually forgiveness written down here to talk to you about because I think it's a difficult subject, not just self-forgiveness but forgiving other people, like moving past
Mm-hmm.
situation, like that's a very touchy subject, right? And it's completely understandable why.
Mm-hmm.
Forgiveness can sometimes mean looking at the situation and realizing you don't need forgiveness because you didn't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can move forward because we're aware of how we've been behaving and how those things affected our lives, and we're working through the process of incorporating our experiences to help grow us and make us stronger and make us of more value to the collective and the community.
Mm-hmm.
So when it came to self-forgiveness, it helped me a lot to change my own narrative around the word and just realize I don't need forgiveness because I didn't do anything wrong. I did the best I could with what I knew how to behave and how I knew how to handle the situation at the time that it
Right.
happened. And I'm blessed to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
I'm blessed to still be here.
Absolutely.
I think that it becomes a stickier situation and more difficult when we start looking at how to forgive and release energetic attachments to other people,
Mm-hmm.
especially when those people, and so often it is the people who are supposed to be closest to us in our lives, those that we were relying on to protect and guide us and take care of us. Um, how do you feel about our working with those type of energies of releasing ourselves from the judgment and the energetic trap of holding on to hate and blame for other people?
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely a profound question, and I can give you the story of me and my mother. Definitely, the most important figure besides my father. My father was the most important person in my life until he wasn't there anymore. My mother was always somebody's victim. Somebody was always doing something to my mother. But my mother, in her crazy, because my mother was, she was mentally insane. She is going to be 94 years old tomorrow, actually, and she's got advanced stages of dementia.
Yeah.
Since my mother never took care of herself, this is the path that she went to. And there was a lot of hurt. There was a lot of trauma. There was a lot of abuse, of mental, physical abuse, and emotional abuse. But these two, mental and emotional abuse, those were the two biggest abuses that I received from my mother for a very long time. And this is why so much of my silence when it came to sexual assault and sexual abuse. I had no one to turn to because my mother could be my worst enemy. She was emotionally absent because she was dealing with her own demons, whatever that may be. And many times I told to myself, I will never forgive my mother. I will never forgive my mother. I was absent from my mother's life for a very long time. We parted ways in a very horrific way. We were at war. She was like my worst enemy rather than being my mother. And we were always clashing and clashing and clashing. And I was telling to myself all the time, it's like, I have nothing to do with my mother. My mentality has nothing to do with my mother. Who I am has nothing to do with my mother. I never want to be with my mother. Well, this is unavoidable. This is when it was time for me to turn it around and starting exercising forgiveness rather than keep on feeding on that redundant hatred. You did this to me. I want nothing to do with you. You did this to me. I'm your victim. I'm your victim. And it was time for me to turn the table around and say, my mother was a lost soul, a very lost woman. She did the best she could with the little tools she had. My mother comes from an era that I have no comprehension on what the behaviors were. And it started to open my mind to understand. It's like, oh my God, my mother did the best she could with the little that she had. My mother came to me many years later and she said, I'm sorry for all the things that I did to you because I didn't know what I was doing. And I believed her. I truthfully believed her. And fast forward all of these years later, I go to Puerto Rico from time to time. My sister is her caregiver, and I see my mother in that hospital bed. And sometimes she knows who I am, some other times she doesn't know who I am. And I say to myself, thank you, because I forgave this woman for whatever demons were following her. And I am thankful because I stopped being her victim. And through her eyes, I learned what to do and what not to do as a mother that I am now. This is very profound, but I am very at peace with my mother. And every time I can go to Puerto Rico to help out, I do it with love, compassion, empathy, and there's no such thing as hate anymore towards her, towards this person that I thought I hated, and I didn't think. I really despised her for many, many years. And change had to come, and a big part of those changes that I had to go through in order to progress with my own life, it was making peace in the best possible way with my mother, because when my mother is gone, then I will have a lot of peace of mind saying, you know what, I exercise compassion and empathy for someone that hurt me so much. And even as crazy as it sounds, but it's one of the best things I ever done for myself
Yeah.
as a human being, as a daughter, as a friend, as a mother that I am. It's like I learned through my mother what to do as a mom. And it may sound weird, but it's definitely my story. Definitely.
Yeah, I think it can be very helpful. We spend so much time in our own heads because we are our own protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me it was helpful to like put myself in somebody else's life, make somebody else the protagonist for a minute just to look at what that looks like, because whether it's a stranger that did something to you or somebody, a family member or whoever it is,
Mm-hmm.
they're the protagonist in their own life. Like these are all just
Right.
people. Nobody comes onto this earth born with an instruction manual.
Right.
Right?
Oh my
So
God. We wish.
right, there's no instruction manual for this, for what the experience is going to be, how to unfold, how to learn. Like nobody knows that.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
every person you interact with is coming from their own set of stories, their own baggage, their own
Hmm.
traumas that are healed or not healed. They're at some point in their journey as well. So and so I'm finally at a place where I'm good with that. I'm happy with
Yeah.
that. In many ways, like you said, I'm almost thankful for it
Hmm.
because I could have, my journey could have turned out a lot different. I could have been a lot of different
Hmm.
people if things had unfolded differently, or if I had been born to a different family, or if I had come across different people in my interactions.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today about it.
Hmm.
That doesn't make whatever was done to you right.
Hmm.
It doesn't make it okay. It doesn't mean it should continue, especially if it's something that we're in the midst of.
Hmm.
As long as forgiveness doesn't fall into the category of, I'm just going to continue to tolerate a behavior, or I'm just going to
That's right.
continue, right? That's not what forgiveness means.
That's right. Forgiveness is change. Forgiveness is learning the lesson and making sure that you're going to do those changes and that you really mean what you say. Because a lot of people say, oh, I'm sorry. And okay, till the next time I repeatedly do this crap again. And then you're sorry again, then you're sorry again and again and again and again. No, that is not forgiveness.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is, I am going to do these changes because I learned the lesson and this is just not gonna happen again. That is real forgiveness.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. I totally know exactly where you're coming from. There's so many people in this life that have come to me. I am so sorry, and I'm so sorry. But next week I forgot that I said I'm sorry, and I'll do the same thing again. And it's like, well, then you are not sorry at all.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I think forgiveness is a thing that can happen once something is over. Like,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
sometimes you can't rely on other people to make something over. You have to make that decision for yourself. So
Yeah.
once we can solidly say, no, this is over, whatever the
Hmm.
situation may be, because I'm not doing this
Yeah.
anymore. Once we separate and the situation is over, then we can reflect and get to a place of forgiveness.
Definitely. Oh my God.
If
Yeah.
people
So
need
true.
forgiveness every Tuesday, like, listen, I am not a Catholic priest. Don't come to me every Sunday and tell me what you
Exactly.
did and expect me to forgive you. Like, that's not how
Exactly.
that may be how some things work. That's not how this works.
Exactly. Oh my God. Ain't that the truth? Hmm. Oh my
But that's, see,
goodness.
some conversations just go, right? You just get into it, it keeps going. Can you let everybody know real fast? Shout out your website, your links, let everybody know where they can find you.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. My website is www.woundedhealer.us, and I am all social media. I'm in Instagram as woundedhealer.blanca. I am on Facebook as Blanca E. Rodriguez or Wounded Healer. So, yes, you can find me everywhere I am, and definitely I am here to help. And if you need someone to talk to, I am not kidding you. Contact me. This is confidential. 5 minutes of talking to someone can make a huge difference in your life. Just make sure that you're talking to the right person and the rest will follow. I can attest to that. I have had people in my life that it takes 5 or 10 minutes of talking to someone that will really make illuminate your mind with new things and new hope. Definitely. Don't do it alone. Don't be like me. So don't do it alone. We got you.
Absolutely. I will put all of those links in the description. Go check out
Thank you.
Blanca. I'm going to go find you on there. And thank all of you guys for being here. I appreciate you. Like, subscribe, all of that fun filled stuff. And we'll see you next time on Spirituality.